Hello guys, Travis here, and here we are, top 10 worst games of 2021. It was a roller coaster ride of a year. There was a lot of good games that I talked about with the best games video. There was a lot of 8s, 9s out of 10s, but on the flip side of that, there were also the games that just drove me nuts, or were just straight up boring, or were terrible, maybe want to pull my hair out, and that's what we're here for today. I wish I didn't have to make this list. I wish that all the games would come out at least decent to good, but that's not going to happen. So, without further ado, these are my top 10 worst games of 2021. At number 10, I have Aliens Fireteam Elite. This is really just a repetitive horde mode with repetitive level designs with only really a couple nice looking areas throughout the whole game. I did play this game with 2 other people, and I can't really imagine ever playing this game by myself because it is very boring, at least in my opinion. I guess you could say that the aliens move a lot better and smarter than they were in a game like Aliens Colonial Marines, so that maybe keeps it from being higher on this list, but really saying a game is more functional than Colonial Marines is not much of a compliment. I've personally been waiting forever for a sequel to a game like Alien Isolation, which hopefully we do get at some point, now that Sega no longer has it because they weren't really going to do anything with it. But until then, we get to deal with games like this. I think the only thing they could do with the Aliens license is put thousands of aliens on a ship, tell you to shoot at it, with very minimal story involved, just a big, linear, corridor shooter. The Aliens license deserves better, and I hope we get better. We have seen better in the past with a game like Alien Isolation, and they need to get back to doing what works. At number 9, I have Necromunda Hired Gun. This game is really just a knockoff of many games, the biggest culprit easily being Doom, which they really didn't do a good job of capturing what makes Doom so good in the first place. So at least if you're going to copy something, do it right or attempt to improve on it, but they didn't. They just made it worse. They just took elements that they thought made Doom good, put it into their game, thought it'd be good because Doom was good, but that's not how it works. You actually have to put time and effort into the game and actually take those elements from Doom and make them your own, but they didn't. The game had terrible voice acting, bad level design, boring repetitive gameplay, and just terrible story. The best I could really say about this game is the gunplay is somewhat competent. Like, it functions okay, but then you surround that with terrible melee kill animations, which is the easiest way to kill people, but you will have to deal with the same 4 or 5 animations over and over again, and they're just not good. I don't really think this game has much potential. I don't want to see a sequel to it, which it is a 40K game, so we may see it anyway, because there are 1,000 of those games at this point. But I think just playing this game, I think we've suffered enough. At number 8, I have Horror Tales: The Wine. A horror-type puzzle game that was just really boring, if I'm being honest. I didn't find the puzzles interesting. They more kind of put me to sleep, especially as the game went on, and it wasn't the same puzzles, but they were all very boring and drawn out and just not interesting to do. The enemy designs were pretty terrible. The gameplay was janky at best. Just everything about the game was uninteresting and stiff. The only thing it really had going for it is it was made by a small dev team, and it was mercifully short at only about 3 hours. Because if I had to play this game for 10, 12 hours, it would have been way higher on this list, because I don't even know if I could have completed it. Like, I would have tried my best, but it would have been torture. Sometimes just because you can make a horror puzzle game, that doesn't mean you should. Especially if it doesn't feel like you have a solid idea in the first place. There may have been a story, an underlining story that could have been much deeper, but I didn't even care because the core of the game was so bad that I didn't care what kind of story it was trying to tell. I tried to piece it together. I know they were going for something, but the game was just so bad and boring. I just didn't care. And you'll hear about this a few times on this list. I don't really like to call games repetitive in general because I think all games are repetitive in their own way. But when I do call a game repetitive is when it's boring repetitive. And that's what this game is. A lot of the games on this list suffer from that problem. It's just boring and repetitive, and that is just a recipe for failure from the get-go. This game is supposed to be the first in a series of the Horror Tales saga, and I beg you, JanduSoft, I beg you, please show me mercy. Please, because unless you make major improvements, I'm scared for the future of these games and my sanity. At number 7, I have Evil Inside, a ripoff of PT. That's it. It is just a fucking ripoff of PT. Fuck this game. Next. At number 6, I have BIOMUTANT. When the game first started out, I thought it had some potential, especially with the promotional material and everything. It looked really good. It looked like it could be a pretty good game. But those thoughts died out pretty fast as the game hits you with very boring, very repetitive missions that started to put me to sleep. The gameplay was uninteresting and really not that good or innovative. This game also had a big empty open world, which I feel like is the game's biggest negative. It just felt like it had an open world for the sake of having an open world. And I played the game for about 10 hours and I just stopped caring about the game. And in that amount of time, I didn't want to play it anymore. I was just done, which is very rare for me. If anybody knows me, it's very rare for me to just stop a game and go, I'm done. It has to be on that level of bad for me to even do that. And it's just to have a game this repetitive and this boring in an open world as big as this game. It's not a huge open world, but it's big enough where it's like I'm running around, it's an empty world, and there's nothing to do, and it's the same boring bullshit the whole time. And if you make a game like that, if you're not putting any effort into it, then why should I? It is one of those games with really all the potential in the world. The idea is solid in general, but just with terrible execution, which is disappointing. I expected more, and I hope if Experiment 101 makes another game, they improve on all of these issues and are able to make a much better game, but this one just didn't do it for me. At number 5, I have Outriders. And where do I start with this one? So this game didn't get off to a good start initially, as most of the time it wouldn't even let us log into the game, and it would just be sitting on an authenticating page. I'm assuming they have fixed that since then, but this game is so bland and so much nothing to it that I wouldn't even be shocked if that login failure was still going on. This game is like a poor man's Division with alien creatures, which you think may be fun, but it's just not fucking fun at all. Just a boring, repetitive, and very bland game. And just like Aliens Fireteam Elite, most of the game is just fighting hordes of enemies, which apparently these developers thinks automatically makes the game good. This game can be played in co-op, which thank God you can, because without co-op, this game would just be unbearable to play. I try to wrap my head around people giving this game a good score, and I try my best to try to see other people's views, but I just don't see it. It is so unbelievably boring, and unlike these other games that had the common decency of being 3 to 6 hours, this game did not. It was 12-ish hours of this same bullshit over and over and over again. This was probably the most bored I've been playing a game in a long time, and I just wanted it to end. This game is not worth my time. It is not worth your time. Please pass. At number 4, I have Werewolf, the Apocalypse, EARTHBLOOD! A game that really has no reason to exist, but it does. You basically play as a character who can turn into a werewolf and fight enemies, which is a cool concept on paper, except it sucks. The voice acting in this game is brutally terrible, some of the worst I've heard. Some of the worst voice acting of any game I've played this year, if not the worst. The story is utter garbage, very outdated graphics, and clunky gameplay and animations. The RPG elements in this game are terrible, as you'll have characters ask you questions, and even if you answer all the questions wrong, they'll still let you proceed with no consequences. which isn't how you make an RPG. If you're gonna have selections in there that you could get wrong and the character will say you're wrong, then there should be consequences to that. You shouldn't say, you just answered all 4 questions wrong, but you know what, you can continue. That's not how you make an RPG, guys. It is not how you make an RPG. It's like very basic stuff this game doesn't know how to do whatsoever. And like I said before, the game can't even make up with it, with the bad stuff. It can't even make up with good gameplay. Some people can overlook bad dialogue if the gameplay's really good. This game can't even bring that to the table. Just terrible gameplay, a cool concept wasted. At number 3, I have my most disappointing game of the year by a country mile, Battlefield 2042. This game just utterly pissed me off. The amount of glitches, the amount of texture issues, the lack of content, the lack of maps. This may not be the worst game on my list this year, but this was definitely the most infuriating game I've played this year, and maybe in the last few years. Battlefield fans deserve better. Any more DICE just shoves games out half-assed and tries to fix them later. They lack content. They all lack content. They try to add more stuff later, but this time, you don't get free upgrades like Battlefront 2. You gotta pay for that shit, so you can't even use that excuse. And I don't know if it's DICE's fault or EA's fault, but at this point, I'm blaming both of them. With what happened with Battlefront 2 at launch, you would think DICE would make sure this game came out in a working state with the right amount of content, the right amount of modes, especially for a multiplayer-only game, but the complete opposite happened. And this is a terrible trend that is ruining a multiplayer franchise that I actually enjoyed for the longest time. I'm not a big multiplayer fan, but for the longest time, I really enjoyed Battlefield. But the last 2 Battlefields have really started to change my mind and make me wonder, what the fuck is DICE doing? I feel like they just don't care about their fans at this point, because if they did, they wouldn't do this. They wouldn't have to fix all this stuff. They would make sure it came out in a working state. They would make sure they had the content they needed so they weren't pushing it out later. They would just fucking do it, because that's what a good company does. Because that's what a good company does. Who cares about their fans? And with Vince Zampella, the CEO of Respawn, now heading the Battlefield franchise, I want to say I have some hope, but I don't. And Battlefield fans deserve better. At number 2, I have Dungeons & Dragons Dark Alliance. Now, a lot of games I've called boring throughout this list as we've gone on, but this game I think was easily the most boring game I've played this year. Nothing about this game was redeeming. The combat was terrible. The story was a big bowl of nothing. The enemy design sucked. The level design sucked. The gameplay is buggy as fuck. The hitboxes are about non-existent. Just everything about this game sucks, and this game can also get fucked. I never played Dungeons & Dragons, but I have to imagine that not even a diehard fan would like this pile of garbage. The only redeeming quality to the game is I got it on Game Pass, which has nothing to do with the game. It's just that I got to play it for free, so I don't have to waste my money in this pile of shit. I'm not sure what the developers were going for with this game, but whatever it was, it failed on every aspect. So do us all a favor and don't make another one of these things. It's not worth our time, and it's definitely not worth your very minimal effort. My number 1 worst game of 2021 is Balan Wonderworld, a game that should not exist. The fact that it does is kind of an insult to our intelligence. I'm not even sure what the developer was thinking here. At least with Dungeons & Dragons, I can kind of see what they were somewhat trying to go for, even though it failed miserably. But in this game, I don't even have a clue what they were trying to do. This is the most randomly terrible game I've played in a long time. And this game was made by the creator of Sonic. Like, what the fuck happened? This was the only game this year that gave me motion sickness because of how terrible the level designs were. The game is clunky, characters just disappear when you walk up to them, you break blocks, and the animations of the blocks breaking looks like it was done by a high school student trying to learn how to make a game for the first time. This game is an embarrassment. It shouldn't exist in this or any realm. And the creator had the audacity to also release a mobile game about 2 or so weeks ago at the recording of this video. And did I mention at launch this game was full price? $60? Yeah, fuck this game and everything it stands for. Please, I beg you, don't play this game. It's not worth your time, and it definitely isn't worth your money. And that's my list. Like I said before at the beginning of the video, I wish I wouldn't have to make this video. I wish all the games would come out in a decent to really good state, but the way developers are anymore, and even smaller games sometimes, it's probably not going to happen. You'll see me here every year talking about top 10 worst games of whatever year, because some developers don't learn, some double down, some think they know what's best for gamers when really they're just ruining and hurting the community as a whole. And so I hope for the best. I hope we get to a point where I never have to make this video, but I'm also not holding my breath. But that's my list. Let me know what your worst games of the year are if you have one. I'd love to hear it. If you like the content we've been putting out, the best games video is up on the channel already. Playthroughs are starting to go back up. Reviews I'm going to be starting back up when games start coming back out in 2022. So if you like that kind of content, please subscribe. We would appreciate it. If you have any kind of feedback for us, we would also appreciate it. Any kind of feedback, either good or bad, is very helpful to us. But until then, thank you guys for watching, and I will talk to you next time. Bye, guys.